Welcome to the Loggins Den. Today we have a guest. Our guest is Haley Isakopoulos. She is a CrossFit enthusiast, and we're gonna explore her life. How are you doing, Haley?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me on.
Oh yeah, I'm excited to hear about a lot of CrossFit and your journey through fitness. So how about you tell us a little bit about your fitness journey, and you can take us all the way back to childhood, whatever, and
Yeah.
the present day.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting place to start because I never really did the conventional sports, I guess is the easiest way to say it. I've always loved being pretty versatile and trying things out, but I did like AY as a kid, as a lot of people did.
What is AY?
AYSO soccer.
Oh, so, yeah.
Let me just say the teams I was on, the most serious we were was like we actually had a day a week of practice where we pretended to be golden retrievers because that was our team name. And like actually walked around on all fours, so that should give you a good picture of how serious of an athlete.
What grade? What grade? What age were you introduced to sports at?
I was probably, I would say like second grade.
Yeah.
But just for a year or two, my mom took us to swim lessons when we were young. They really just did their best to expose us to a lot of different stuff.
Yeah.
I think I did like a year of gymnastics and hated it. Not a CrossFitter thing to say. But yeah, I didn't really do many conventional sports. What I got into when I was in about, I guess I was 12 or 13, was horseback riding. So I pretty much, that was my sport all through adolescence and into early college. Started off kind of just a lesson a week thinking it wasn't going to be anything serious, and then really tripped into a competition barn, but ended up doing a lot of the pretty high-end competition stuff around that with what are called Grand Prix circuits. But
so what does a horse riding competition look like? What are you doing on the horse?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different genres. I specifically competed in show jumping, which kind of just maybe anywhere from like 14 to 20-ish fences, kind of like the ones with the poles and the standards that you see. And there's different categories of that, but ours really, it was ultimately judged on how fast can you go without getting any faults, as we call them. So not knocking anything down, not messing it up. There's some nuances there, but it's sort of the daredevil of the equestrian sports in terms of just like hit the gas pedal and try not to kill yourself.
When I was watching like a YouTube clip on for the Olympics, I saw like a trotting horse, like a horse that would trot. So you were messing with
that's dressage.
That's
different.
That's, when each sport kind of has their nuances, like that maybe only people get into, but then what makes a sport bigger is that like globally people find it interesting. So like athleticism, like basketball. We may not know a lot about basketball, but a dunk looks cool, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, with the horse like trotting, I was like, I don't know what's going on. I bet it takes a lot of skill to get your horse to do a specific trot.
Absolutely.
To get the world into it, you're like, that's
absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, the honest thing, like the classic question you got asked was like, is that even a sport? And I remember being so frustrated because no, it's not as physical of a sport as like marathon running or other things. But, it challenges that concept of like, what is sport? What is athleticism? If you count balance and coordination and like 3D visual ability, and I mean, like pulling strength, you're fighting a huge animal. There's a lot of athleticism that goes into that, but it's unconventional.
Yeah. But for sure,
that said, go ahead.
It's easier sell for everyone to watch a horse and a person on it going over stuff though. That's way like that's easier sell to everyone than.
Yeah, I'm absolutely biased, but I was like, there's like show jumping and then there's everything else. We don't need that stuff. And partially because now I'm in CrossFit, which I'll kind of lay out the steps to that, but because you have that really hyper competitive adrenaline junkie mindset. So horses scratch that itch for me. I did kind of like dabble in track and field, sort of like the mid distances. They wanted to make me an 800 runner. And I was like, that's the last time I run track.
What age group did you dabble in track?
I did it when I think it was sophomore year of high school.
Oh, okay.
Just for a year. The only reason I stopped was because I was riding so competitively at that point. I was gone 13 to 15 weekends a year.
Yeah.
And that's like Wednesday through Sunday. So I just was juggling a lot. I did kind of the peak of the things I did in horses. I competed at what's called Young Riders, which is sort of a junior Olympics level. And then I did what's called the World Cup qualifiers. There's multiple of them, but it is like an international level event. So I just was going hard in that, figured it was a temporary thing. And then when I got into college, as many people do, is like either this becomes my career of sorts or I do something else. So I stopped. That was really all I did. I didn't do any other conventional sports or team sports, a lot of individual stuff. And then for me from there, it was just navigating, you know, what do I actually enjoy? And like, do I do fitness for the sake of fitness, or do I do fitness because it scratches other parts of my personality? And kind of mixed in with all that, I should throw in was I had a stint with a pretty significant eating disorder in high school.
Okay.
So a lot of the basis of my like obsession with running, and even like an anatomy teacher that introduced me to weightlifting, was an aesthetic goal.
Right.
And I don't think you ever get away from that, obviously, as like everybody wants to look good and perform well, but CrossFit has completely reshaped my mentality on like, why do I love fitness and why do I love being athletic and what does it allow my body to do that opens up the world to me for all these other activities I love. So
yeah, part of the, when we get into the components of fitness, like body composition is one of the parts of fitness. So feel free to open up as much or as little as you want when we get there. But it's wild to think about how that portion of our life impacts all of our other parts of fitness as well. When you were training for jumping on horses, did you do any physical training or was it all technical? Well, like, did you do training off the horse when you were training for?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was on you if you were going to do it. So really, horseback riding, you show up at the barn. If you're in a bougie barn, your horse is pretty much ready for you. You get on, you do your training. There's a lot of sort of physical training that you can drill when you're not just, you know, you don't just do what you do at competitions all day in, day out. Like we'll do training without stirrups where, you know, you're working on a lot of leg strength or like working on your seat and your posture and all these things. So there are drills you do on the horse, but there was never any organized physical fitness training outside of what they provided at the stables. So if I wanted to be fit, I had to do that on my own time, which again, this was all kind of coinciding with all of that, the eating issues. So I trained outside of that a ton, like I was a psycho and I still kind of am, but I would get up when I was 14, like through high school, I would get up at 5 a.m., work out for an hour in the morning. I would go to school. I would train, like I was at the barn usually 5 or 6 days a week. And then I would often like run and do more stuff after in the afternoon. So I was training like crazy, but it was poor motivation and it ended up harming my athletic like potential in a sense, because there was a point where I was so skinny and so not healthy from this obsession with fitness that my trainers actually pulled me aside and they were like, something's off, like you're starting to have problems. So anyway, a little long-winded, but yeah, there was definitely my own personal drive to being like, I'm on a multiple 100-pound animal. I want to at least be able to hold on. But it's kind of a different thing that like, there's not a whole lot of explosive strength or things you'd need to use in that type of capacity.
Yeah. When I actually proposed to Allison, Doug was there when we were talking, someone pulled our makeshift sled in the snow. And while she was on it, she got bucked off. And we were like, this animal's so strong. Like she actually just had broken her back like the year before. So her getting bucked off. We're like, because she was breaking the horse or something like that. It was, I was like, Doug and Danza can just pull me and out.
Just drag the sled,
like, no, we'll be fine. And it ended up working really well. But I was like, oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, I remember my mom stopped counting. Like she was counting how many times I'd been thrown, and she stopped at 100, and that was like early on in my horse career. Like you come off all the time, but bouncing is athleticism.
So you were about done with high school ended. You're done jumping with horses, and then is there a gap between horse riding and fitness life? Or were you always still running even though you were not in something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. My senior year, there's kind of a lot of small things along the way. I had my wisdom teeth out. Long story short, my jaw was broken and we didn't know it. And I was bouncing off of the eating disorder. So my senior year was kind of when my sister had an eating disorder and my parents knew what was happening and they were like, absolutely not, cut it off real fast. But I was on a bunch of steroids for my jaw, and then I was bouncing back from eating disorder, which, a lot of people swing. And so I put on 40 pounds in about 6 months, my senior year. I was like 95 pounds, so I wasn't exactly healthy, but it was a lot. And my body did not really do well with it. So I went into college. I was still riding. I stopped after my sophomore year at college.
Okay.
But I remember my freshman year in college, I couldn't even hardly run a mile consecutively without just feeling awful. I was not at my peak. And for reference, in high school, I was running like a 6:13 at my fastest. So I dropped a long way.
Yeah.
And that was really the first crisis I had of being like, I don't know how to overcome this. And it would be a lot easier just to freak out and become your average American. Or, which I think is just a function of my personality. I was like, I need to find a way through this because I'm absolutely miserable. I hate how I look. I hate how I feel. There's a lot of other stuff in life going on, just transitioning into kind of early adulthood. But thank God, it was a reaction of I need to figure this out. And that year was really one of just kind of slogging through, having no idea at all. I hadn't done conventional sports. Nobody had ever programmed stuff for me. I didn't know how to approach fitness in a healthy sense. But one of the things I found in college was I signed up for doing what's called PT, just physical training with the Army cadets. So you could do ROTC workouts with them in the morning. And I was like, great, I'll fail the class if I don't show up. I'm just going to sign up for this class.
Oh, it was a credit. It was like a PE course, except it was PT. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a half a credit. I got nothing for it, but I just know I'm the person that will show up 110% of the time if I'm accountable to something. So I was like, this is the only way to get myself out of this hole. So I signed up for it. It was horrible. I remember being the first day, actually almost passing out in the track. We were doing bleachers and circuits and all this stuff. And I thought I was going to die. But that really did pull me out of the hole. And then I did that my sophomore year too, but I didn't actually discover CrossFit until I took a gap year in college. And then I found it halfway through my junior year. So I had this period of kind of fitness identity struggle of I stopped riding. I don't really know what I like doing anymore. I'm a sucky runner now. And there's definitely a pride complex of I want to do what I'm good at. So what am I good at? So that was my period of flux.
Did you pick up CrossFit in California or in Tennessee?
California.
Okay.
So I did my first 2 years at UC Berkeley, we call Cal. Didn't like it there. And so I had met a guy at the time who ended up dating for a period, but he was taking a gap year and hitchhiking around the world. And I was like, what a phenomenal idea. Maybe minus the hitchhiking part. But I was like, wow, a year of not having to do school. That sounds great. And I just was lost. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life either. And so I somehow talked my parents into letting me take a full year off. Went and I kind of tried to find my career path, did an outdoor school in South America with a company called Knowles, which is really cool. And then came back and had applied to transfer just because I knew I didn't want to be at Cal anymore, if at all possible. And one of the few places I got in, transfers are quite competitive, was Pepperdine in Malibu. I hadn't actually wanted to go, but it's a long story. I was going to go back to Cal and then there were some issues with my class credits. And so I just figured I'll go to Pepperdine for 6 months, keep getting some credits, and then I'll just go finish it at Cal and suck it up. And I was at Pepperdine 2 weeks looking at the ocean. I'm like, why would I ever leave? This is the best place I've ever been. So I stayed there, and it was there. I was a sports medicine major. I'd started as nutrition at Cal. But yeah, I really got into the sports medicine thing, and I was in exercise physiology class, and they had the US CrossFit team at the time. I'd never heard of CrossFit ever.
Right.
But the professors at Pepperdine were kind of involved with the CrossFit HQ and Dave Castro and some of the programming stuff.
What year was this?
This was 2012, I think.
Okay.
They had Matt Chan, Julie Fouché, all those crew come, and Julie Fouché did Fran, in front of us with a VO2 monitor on.
Oh, wow.
It's the first time I learned about VO2. And I just remember watching her like skyrocket to plateau and then just stay at plateau for 3 minutes. And I was like, how can you stay at plateau?
She had a VO2 unit. Was it a mobile unit or was she attached to a box to a wall?
Yeah, it was like a mobile mask that was essentially measuring.
I took 2 years ago, I did a VO2 max, but it's to a box, right? And I saw one recently that it was like on the person, so you could do something like that.
Portable, So she, I mean, for those that don't know what Fran is, I guess rep scheme is 21, 15, 9 of 2 movements. So you do 21, 21, 15, 15, 9, 9, and it's pull-ups, which let alone seeing a girl do a pull-up, forget butterfly pull-ups, like was not a thing that I had watched. And then thrusters, which is a full squat and full extension overhead with a barbell.
And if anyone who's never tried a thruster, like right out of you could do it with the bar and do 10 reps. And if you've never done it, you're gonna breathe heavy. You're gonna be like,
you're gonna feel like you're gonna vomit. That workout is awful. Now I've done it multiple times since. I mean, I still at the time had no concept.
Right.
And I was still impressed. Like I was like, I've never done anything like that, and that looks horrific. I'm gonna go try that naturally. So it was cool because there was a gym, CrossFit Malibu, Mike, coach there, just founder, awesome guy. And he was up with those crew while they were doing it, kind of collaborating on the demonstration. And, you know, they were like, oh, if anybody wants to check it out, like come see us afterwards. And so multiple of my professors worked out there, which I hadn't really known, but part of what I loved is I'd come from a really small Christian high school where like you went to lunch with your professors and you had all these relationships. And so I hadn't really realized how much I was missing that communal aspect of life, but also fitness. And so when I tried it out, I talked like 2 girlfriends into going who immediately dropped out after finishing the first month.
Needed them to get you there. Yeah.
I was like, I just need to not be alone. Like girls go to the bathroom together. We go to the gym together. So I went, tried it out, was like, this is the worst and the best thing I've ever had. Like just hit that mental obsessiveness component. And then I just stayed and absolutely loved it. Ended up like I would go to office hours for physics. Like one of my closest friend and professors at the time was my physics professor. I would go do like 2 hours and we'd be like, oh, it's 4:30. We got to go to 5 o'clock WOD. And we'd just like drive over there. It was just such a gift after 2 years of feeling pretty small fish, big pond at Berkeley.
Right.
So yeah, the CrossFit was part of what got me into it. But like many people say about the sport, like it was the community that I just,
for sure.
Like if you didn't show up, people were like, where were you yesterday? Like you usually go to 5 o'clock and you're like, I copped out.
So when you go there, it's a class, everyone that goes there, it's a class-based, or can you show up? Can you just drop in and do your own thing as well?
It's pretty gym dependent. The one in Malibu is really small. It's like literally a hut. They call it the hut. So there's not, I would say there's enough room for like, I'm probably not going to remember exactly, but maybe like 10, 12 athletes at once. Like it's a small gym.
So it would be hard to drop in if there's going on.
Yeah, like you could do stuff outside. The gym I'm at now or other gyms, like there's open gym running concurrently with classes. But honestly, like the whole thing is around the class mentality, unless you're an elite athlete. Like what's getting you there is the fact that when you're dying, somebody's starting that final rep and you're like, I need to keep up with everybody else. So that's kind of what you're signing up for, is just that camaraderie and the peer pressure of sorts. Yeah.
So then you start CrossFit and then you end up now. So what's been going on from the start to now?
Yeah. So I did it for about 2 years in college, got the fittest I'd ever been. Was like, this is the answer for me. I'm actually not the person that's like, everybody should CrossFit. I'm really not. I don't think everybody should, but for me, it was the right thing and I loved it. I then kind of at the end of that season was obviously graduating college. I'd sort of just not figured out what I wanted to do, but I have a dad who's a surgeon and loved science my whole life. And so it was like, well, medicine's the natural thing. Thought I was going to go to med school. The short answer was like, I don't want to put in that much work. And I really don't like these people. Like everybody is just which doesn't make sense. You know, I'm like, here I am in this hyper competitive sport. Like it probably was just a reactionary I just want to beat everyone. And I don't know if I can. I don't know what it was, but I didn't end up wanting to do med school. And somebody was like, oh, have you ever heard of being a physician assistant? And I was like, nah, what's a PA? I don't know what they do.
Yeah.
Frankly, like so I applied to all these programs just being like, I'm out of time. Didn't even know what a PA really did. Like I literally remember praying going into my interviews for grad school. I was like, please don't have them ask me like what the difference for a PA of other people are, because I don't know. Like,
Really?
I had no clue. But anyway, did that. Ended up getting into PA school first round in Nashville, Tennessee at a school called Trevecca, and moved out there. And as is the case for many people in grad school, it was crazy. So I did manage to hang on to working out with a gym there called CrossFit Forte, which was awesome. Loved the community. It was a really good fit, but had a little bit of a curveball. My end of my first semester, I got diagnosed with a heart condition.
Well, how old were you at this time?
That was 2015, so I would have been about 25.
Okay.
Yeah, and I had I'm kind of trying to figure out the simplest way. I'd had some like sort of like faintness, like feeling like I might pass out. Never had like conscious arrhythmias in high school, but I'd actually been worked up. And it was sort of concluded, oh, it was probably just your eating disorder and you weren't fueling well enough and your body's under duress. And nothing showed up on my echo or EKG. They were like, yeah, it's a little abnormal, but it's just, you're an athlete, you work out all the time, so you're fine. So I get to PA school and I'm working out a little. I'm definitely not at my peak, but I'm staying healthy relatively. And I remember I was in one of our labs where it's like a procedures lab where you learn how to actually do the stuff you're reading about. And we were learning how to auscultate, which is listening to the heart and lungs. And I remember going home that night with my new fancy stethoscope you get being a PA, and it's all shiny and you're like, this is so cool. I'm going to be a real doctor. And I was listening to my heart, and you're supposed to hear lub dub. And I was like, lub dub. And it was really quiet. But I was just laying there in my apartment and being like, I don't think that's normal, but I have no idea what I'm listening to. I'm the student, I'm learning. So I go into class the next day and I have one of my professors check it out. And she's like, have you ever been worked up? And I'm like, yeah, I have actually. And she was like, oh, okay, then that's fine. If they didn't find anything, it's probably just an innocent murmur, as we call it.
Does that mean there's like leaking between the valves? What's the sound?
It could be a variety of things. Yes, it's a valvular sound. So mine's what's called a systolic ejection murmur, which basically implies that like the blood flow going from my left ventricle that pumps to your body, there's some kind of turbulent flow coming out of your heart going to the rest of your body, which there's multiple causes that can be totally fine. Could be a problem with your aortic valves. There's multiple answers, but the point being, if you have anything, the gold standard is go get an echo and an EKG. And I had both.
Already done. Yeah.
So she was like, great, box is checked, you're good, no worries. Well, less than a week later, I don't remember how exactly soon, might have been like the next day, I was in class and had what we call a pre-syncopal episode in the middle of class, like in that same lab. So I was watching them do something on one of our classmates, and like all of a sudden my heart was racing. I was cold, clammy, had to go lay down because I thought I was going to pass out, like full night vomit response. And they took my blood pressure and I was 60/40, which is normally you're 120/80. So I was like very bad levels. Just meaning my heart was having issues, probably having an arrhythmia of some kind. And that same professor was the one who took my blood pressure outside, and maybe I'm remembering the number wrong. Sorry if I am. But she looked at me and she was like, you need to go get worked up. Like, this is not normal.
Right.
So accelerating story, I went and got worked up. The workup was actually normal again. And praise God, I have a dad in medicine, because he looked at the cardiologist and he was like, I don't care if I have to cash pay. I want a cardiac MRI. Like, something's not right. And I got the MRI and they were like, yeah, you have what's called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which some people in the athletic world may have heard of it, but it's short HCM. And it's the simplest way to say it is it's kind of the football players you hear of in high school that just drop dead on the field.
Oh, okay.
And they were like, oh, they had an underlying heart condition and nobody knew. So quickly, it's basically just you have really thick heart muscle typically in various areas, and it affects the conduction pathways of that electrical beating stimulus. So your heart's healthy in the sense of like, it's not plaques or issues like that, but it can short circuit itself.
Okay.
And that happens with intense exercise. So here I am, 25, I'm going into medicine. I'm like finally sort of getting my health back together. And I'm told, don't drink caffeine. Absolutely, you cannot exercise.
Drink caffeine. I'm sorry, I'm just thinking about.
Oh yeah. I was like, I'm in grad school. Like, do you understand?
Yeah.
I have to drink caffeine. And I had to have a defibrillator placed. So I can probably show that modestly on the screen if people actually want to see it, and I will in a second. But essentially, I can go into ventricular fibrillation or just a heart attack. And if something doesn't resuscitate me, I would die. And that would be most likely to happen in sports like CrossFit, where you are going to near your max heart rate.
Right.
So there's like a wire that runs from here all the way down underneath. And then over here, I think you can see, but I've got this implanted defibrillator. So it's a box under my skin. And that's essentially a sort of like the VO2 thing. That's the portable version of the paddles that you would do on somebody if they went down. So naturally I had about 2 years off of fitness after that because I was in the middle of grad school. I had surgery in the middle of grad school. And then it was brutal schooling and I was totally out of shape and I didn't find to get back in shape. So kind of another season of a fitness slump for me.
Right.
But at the end of that, it was kind of the same question as freshman year in college. It was like, so here I am. I'm 20 pounds heavier than I want to be. I'm miserable again. And now they're telling me it could kill me if I try to get back in shape.
Right.
And I had to make a decision. And what ended up for me being the thing is I was like, look, my whole life I've worked out. I've done CrossFit for years. I haven't died yet. Like now I've got backup. So maybe everybody wouldn't choose the same thing, but for me, it was like, I'm going to be miserable. So I either take these risks and just trust modern medicine, and really face up to the fact that it's such a like American privilege thing to think like, oh, if we're just diagnosed and we know what's going on, then there's like no more risk. We figured it out. And the honest answer is like, we can all die doing various things we love. And it just was so important to me to be healthy and fit. I was like, it's not even like a big mental crisis. There just was no option. I was like, I'm going to get back in shape.
Yeah.
And if I have problems, then we'll deal with it when we get there.
Right.
So
so then how did you get back into CrossFit, right? That slump happened. You're done with PA school, right?
Yep.
And so now you have so much more time on your hands, I'm assuming, right?
Oh, yeah.
Down now. Yeah.
Yep.
So what happens next? You get right back into CrossFit. Is CrossFit a hobby or is it or do you also have goals? Or are they really just one and the same?
Yeah. I did not get right back into CrossFit. I think a lot of people can identify with this. I was scared to get back into CrossFit, not even because of my heart, just like I've had 2 years off. I haven't lifted a barbell. Like I'm going to be destroyed. Everybody knows when you start a new sport and especially CrossFit, like you go 3 days a week and you're just perma-sore. Like you're just like, I feel crippled all the time.
Yeah. What would you say for most gym members, if they're going 3 days a week, what's the time period in which you feel like a regular human again, right? Like, so you're sore every single day. You're working towards like a pretty tough capacity, right? So each workout, the capacity, the volume is pretty high. And how long, what's the duration until you're not destroyed every
as
time?
Miserable?
Yeah.
Every time. I was like, I'm still destroyed. Right now, I'm pretty destroyed. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. It's been a while. If I remember correctly, I would say 3 to 4 months. Really, until you're able to keep up that, like if you're consistently going 3 days a week and you're scaling appropriately, where it's like, yeah, you're pushing yourself, but you're not being an idiot, which hopefully you have good coaches. It's 3 or 4 months before your body's kind of like, okay, I'm getting the swing of this. Then naturally you could go heavier and then you're right back where you were, but you wouldn't stick with it unless you enjoyed that kind of stuff. So yeah, I tell everybody, I'm like, look, give it 3 or 4 months. You're also just learning this huge, like encyclopedic wealth of new movements. And like, if you've never done Olympic lifting or you've never done gymnastics, you're just getting fire hosed at the beginning. So I tell everybody like, look, 3, 4, 6 months, even give it a while. And that's when you really fall in love with something, I think.
Let's dive into how CrossFit matches just fitness in general. So here's my definition of fitness.
All right.
Fitness is, we work towards, it's how our bodies are able to take on events, right? So an event might be doing regular chores around your house. It could be a disaster. So I think of, man, when 9/11 happened, if you were there, you really want to be able to run, right? If you were close and you wanted to get out of there, does your body have the ability to, boom, get out of there? Another one might be just, I want to be able to lift this 50-pound box off the ground and move it somewhere. So it's your ability to take on challenges in any shape or form, right? So that's fitness. And so in fitness, we have 5 components. We have muscular endurance. That means, what can we do for as many reps as possible? It might be pull-ups, it might be push-ups, body squats, weighted squats. We have muscular strength, which is a one maximum effort. And a lot of people think of bench press, one maximum effort, right? Your maximum weight. Or it could even be one maximum jump, right? So is how high can you jump or how far can you jump in one maximum effort? Those two things are totally different, because you're going to be able to go do that again right away, that jump. Whereas maybe you do your max lift and you shouldn't touch it again, right? X amount of weeks.
Yeah.
So we've got those two. Then we've got cardio, right? And even cardio is different. We have steady state cardio and then anaerobic. So that's our aerobic base. And then even in cardio, we would say anaerobic as well.
A sprinter.
Yep. A really fast, full on effort. We think of burpees or sprinting, right? Which some of these times they collide, right? We could definitely say a burpee is also muscular endurance, but the difference between our heart ticking on burpees compared to pull-ups are quite a bit different. So you can make an argument on both. Then we have flexibility, and we can coincide with mobility, right? So the idea of range of motion within our joints. So our movements, can we squat to the ground and pick something up, right? Or is our flexibility prohibiting us from doing what we want to do, kind of thing. And then the last one is body composition. So our body composition is how much muscle we hold, how much fat percentage we have, but it also is what we're born with, as in our genes, right? Like does someone have diabetes, or how we can, holy cow, I forget words sometimes. Help me.
Same.
Metabolism, right? So, how fast is our metabolism? We might be able to control those in some ways. In some ways, you just can't touch it. But then one thing we definitely can control is what we put in our mouth, right? Like what foods, what liquids we're drinking, right? So let's start with our friends muscular strength and muscular endurance. With CrossFit, what is sorry, there was a bug and I thought it was
it's like another spider.
I was like, I'm gonna lose it. No, so what's your experience with muscular endurance, muscular strength, and then how does CrossFit balance those two things?
Oh yeah. So I think one of the things I love about CrossFit is it really does sort of classify that HIIT type training, where what you're saying about everything melding and merging and being totally indistinguishable is like the definition of CrossFit workout.
Yes.
Obviously some days, like what you've seen in the games recently, like they really are testing all these modalities of fitness, such as like, what is your 1 rep max snatch?
Right.
But even that is like, it's explosive power. It's also exceptional, like proprioception, exceptional mobility, exceptional balance. Like it really is.
Yep.
Yeah. Which that's all of fitness. So I don't mean to say like, oh, CrossFit's got a handle on that. Like everything is multifaceted, but I am not classically your like super powerful athlete. So that's sort of an area that I have to put in a lot of work on if I want to improve. For me, I would say CrossFit in general, if you had to kind of pick one of those things, like what is CrossFit? It's highly muscular endurance with kind of a heavier strength component, very different than like an Orange Theory muscular endurance, but mixed with like a very high aerobic taxing element, where it's like, yeah, you need to have the muscular endurance to do like 30 unbroken butterfly pull-ups or whatever, or chest to bars or all these things. But if your lungs are going to blow out, you can't do that.
For most of your training, is it broken down? I thought I talked to Doug about this once, that you might start with your strength training segment, and then you might go into your HIIT workout or your Metcon, right? So do you go through phases in one? Is that true? Is that generally how it's set up?
Yeah, I would say generally class design, that's true.
So then do you go through like a scheme, right? Where you're like, hey, we're working on more muscular endurance based, like we're hitting reps of 10, 12, 8, and then weeks from then you're going to a lower rep scheme where you might be doing reps of 5, and now it's percentagely heavier. Is that occurring, or does it feel more sporadic?
Yeah, there's definitely intention. I wish I knew more of kind of how the programming team I'm at a gym called NC Fit that has multiple locations, and they're pretty well known in terms of being a high level competition gym, at least in the past. Now recently they're a little more crowd level, but just excellent programming. But yeah, we came out recently of something called a Wendler cycle. That's sort of like a progressive strength overloading. Yes. With the intention of resetting a 1 rep max at the end. So they'll do stuff like that.
So what's the Wendler cycle look like? What does it go to?
It's I don't know the formal, like I'm kind of just yeah, I'll show up. But in short, like you were doing sort of like high percentage, like maybe like we were doing like 90% of 90%. So in the 80s percent of your like established 1 rep max at the beginning of the cycle, and then doing like several sets at 5 reps. So like maybe like 3 rounds, of like 1 set of 5, 3 times. And then the following week, like it would be a higher percentage, but you'd do 3 reps. So kind of just like increasing load while decreasing reps, but over, I think it's like a 9-week cycle. So it's kind of a drawn out process, with the intention of like doing higher volume at higher percentages of your 1 reps, and then developing more like power in that, so that when you go to retest your 1 rep max, you've got like a little explosiveness.
So we could say the first part of your workout maybe more towards muscular strength, and then which you're dabbling again, unless you actually max out, like that's not an example, but for training for muscular strength, you're also dabbling in muscular endurance. But then when you get to the Metcon or the HIIT workout, you're now probably dabbling in cardio and then also your muscular endurance. So,
yeah, it depends a lot. So NC Fit's great about like, yes, we will do what like any person on the street would call strength at the beginning of some workout. So like recently we had a workout where you're going to have hang power cleans at 105 pounds in the workout. The strength part of the workout was establishing a 3 rep max hang power. So, you're working up, like, I think I was working up 45, 155, which is my like PR 3 rep. And then taking it down for the workout to then do higher volume of a slightly lower. So that's kind of a classic example. A lot of the other days, like I would say that's true where there's like a strength or a skill at the beginning of the class. So for example, if we're going to have handstand push-ups in the workout, they'll do a handstand push-up, like 10, 15 minutes to work on handstand push-up progression, or like, hey, let's play around with handstand walks for these 10 minutes if you've got those, or like some semblance to get you there. And then the workout. So it always correlates with the workout.
That's awesome.
Sometimes you'll have a finisher or like 5 minutes of mobility at the end that they've programmed in, but pretty classically kind of 2 divisions.
Right. So then when we talk about cardio, how often do you ever strictly do a steady state cardio in that second part? And what's the longest you've done in your training session just through CrossFit? Because I know sometimes you'll dabble in more.
Yeah, I dabble.
Yeah, but in the actual CrossFit space, what are they? Yeah, do you guys do specific steady state cardio then?
No, is the short answer. I have never in just the, class type setting had them be like, and we're going to do 30 minutes on a bike or something. Like that doesn't happen.
And why would you? And I bring that up because you can do that on your free time for free.
Yeah.
Right. So it's
I feel that way.
Yeah, because you have 3 days a week, right? That you're going.
Well, I'm going 6.
You're going
but
6.
Yeah, I go a lot.
But let's say, well, how often does Doug go?
He's 3 to 4. Mm-hmm.
3 to 4, right? So let's say you go 3 days a week. CrossFit generally isn't, if you're going to a gym, it's not the cheapest gym membership, right?
No.
So why would you want to go show up there to be told we're going to go jog for 30 minutes? Or like, it's like, no, you could do that on your own time. Whereas like, you would rather want to hop on their equipment that you don't have at your own house, or do something technical where you'd want a pair of eyes on you or something like that. So
absolutely sense. That's a huge component is like, look, I'm paying for a coach.
Yes.
I don't want to be on a like erg for the next 45 minutes. Like that said, I mean, you can definitely argue to the other side of like, I'm never going to go row for 40 minutes on my own. So maybe it would be nice to have it in class, but for me, I am paying for a technical experience.
But if that's your goal too, to just be generally fit, right? That you can take on it's like, well, if I'm getting my cardio session in anyways, then I'm going to be able to roll that over into any life skills I need to be able to do anyways. So
yeah. Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah. So, and I think the average person really needs the help with form. Like, and that getting back to, I don't recommend CrossFit for everyone. Like, fortunate reputation for injury. And the reason that happens is people will just drag any old Tom, Dick, or Harry in there and say like, this is for everyone, you should do it. And it's like, if you don't have that mobility aspect of fitness, if you don't have any experience weightlifting, you have no business putting weights over your head or like snatching until you know what you're doing, because you will get injured. Anything's like that. So
and your coaches do a pretty good job of modifying. Like if I show up and I can't do it, it's like, hey, we're going to put you on a PVC pipe while we do like tons of reps.
I would say that's one of the best things about the gym I'm at is that there is no, I don't know that I've been in a gym where that's a problem, but like I've definitely dropped in at gyms where it's just kind of like, oh, you're here, like, cool, yeah, do you, whatever. But like coaches where I'm at, if you don't have the mobility to do an overhead squat, like you're not doing a bar, you're doing a PVC pipe until we can get this right. So I wish everywhere was like that, but.
Sure. And then, see, I don't really dabble in a lot of anaerobic base, even though we always have a flag football game on Black Friday. And so I have I have a race coming up, and then after that, I'm going to start doing sprints because it's like we've done it 3 years in a row. Every day, the next day, I am broken, just destroyed because I don't do sprints all the time. Like the first 2 years, I was really messed up. Last year, I did do sprints like a month leading up to it, and I was a lot better.
I was going to say, it probably helped you.
We have 2 guys that come that consistently play in soccer leagues, like 2 to 3 soccer leagues at a time. And we're done. We've been playing football for 2 hours. And then they're like, you guys want to kick the ball around? No, dude. I can barely walk right now.
I'm going to drown myself in an ice bath.
I was like, I'm going to go take a nap because, so that being said, what are some, anaerobic segments in your second part of the class that, how do you feel afterwards? I assume this is when you're like, I'm going to, the classic CrossFit pose when they collapse to their knees, their hands are on the ground, which is interesting. Sometimes it's here, and then other times you see them like putting their hands the opposite.
It's because their grip's blown up. That's when they do that.
Well,
you're like, oh my gosh.
They're just like, so what?
Yeah, ripping their shoes off.
What makes you want what benefit are you feeling from those workouts? Because it clearly you're either what's the term for someone who enjoys pain?
Kind of like masochist, I guess.
You're either a masochist or you're finding like real value after an anaerobic blast, right? So
I think it's both.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely something to be said of like, when it's black and white and you're like, oh, I'm dying and I'm in pain, you're like, obviously I just did something good for me. Like, there's something broken in that mentality, but that's how you feel. I don't know if it's an immediate like, I definitely got fitter right there, but what you're training in those type of situations, especially like the EMOM type of workout in CrossFit, where it's like every minute you're going to do X number of reps. And then when that minute strikes again, you're going to do it again. So you might as well get it done fast.
Right.
Or, you know, you have 6 rounds of 3-minute time intervals just rolling and you have a set amount of work. And then what the time you have left, you rest. Like that's a concept called repeatability. And really where you, it's like measure of how well you can recover and then repeat the same work.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And there's a lot, you know, like that's very different from running a half marathon or things like that. But, you know, in the primal sense, as people do the example, like, oh, if you're running away from something and you like sprint and think you're good and then it's back again, you're going to really want to be able to run again. And it's a dumb example. Like we don't do that in real life, but you have to, a different type of fitness than the marathon runner. And really just being able to kind of, even in times of fatigue, like produce the same work output again and again and again.
I have a friend who's like 20, 25 years older than me, and he would in parking lots run from his car to the store because there's not a lot, because the whole mentality of if you don't use it, you lose it. And how true is that when it comes to high, like putting forth a lot of energy, like sprinting, right?
Yeah.
So the idea is kind of jumping all around, but there's a big push in steady state cardio, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is our heart rate possibly never really gets up close to maximum beats per minute. Whereas a sprint will get it up so fast, and then we have to deal with that real pain. So
yeah,
if we're doing that consistently, then it's not as big of a deal. So like what you said, when you kind of talked about repeatability, the idea of being able to recover faster, that idea.
Mm-hmm.
So I would even assume that the idea of the 3 to 4 months, even 6 months, like, well, your body is now better at helping clear out lactic acid, or being able to just deal with the disgust of being loaded with whatever's going on inside, you know?
Yeah.
So,
and that is a big aspect of fitness. Like, and maybe that is included in something like that mental aspect. It's not a physical aspect, but there are so many things in CrossFit or in running, like where you might not necessarily be physically fitter, like if you were to do a muscle biopsy or if you were going to take a VO2 max, but like mentally you're able to say, yeah, I hurt like to this percentage of what I'm willing to tolerate. And like, I used to be able to only ride it out at 70, but now like at 85, I can be like, this sucks and I'm okay staying there.
yeah, we'll have to talk about this just a little more on, but the idea of stress management in a safe location. So like the gym is a safe place. You're not going to get hurt. You're not going to get hopefully you're not going to get abused or, you know, yelled at to experience like emotional stress, but you can train your body to deal with a different form of stress because our body reacts the same in stressful situations. Right. And so really exercise forces that stress, right? So like if you have anxiety and you start sweating, right? So our body responds in the same ways, but now this is in a safe place to practice that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's kind of, fitness is one of those things where like you can say all these glorious sort of, you know, philosophical things about it, but for me, they're sort of like applied when looking back. Like that's not what brought me into that type of training, but now that I love I can really see like, hey, this does affect my ability to tolerate like small inconveniences during the day. Or like if something's really uncomfortable or like, I don't know, you're like, how am I going to figure out how to like pay my mortgage? Like, you're just like, I've been in microcosmic situations like this before where I didn't think I could tough it out or like find a way. And I don't think you can overvalue like willingly putting yourself in those scenarios because that's life in general. And I know some people would see it as exhausting in terms of like, why would you use your free time go extra that's going to like mimic stress? Like I use exercise as a de-stressor, but yeah, the personalities that enjoy that type of working out are really like, it is sort of just a personal fulfillment, like high of I was willing to put myself in that spot, tough it out, and like I'm performing better than I ever have under these circumstances. And like that type of success it's a number of a 1 rep max or like a time on a girl workout that you've like Fran that you've done before, like that you can see personal progress, that's just addictive and is a really cool way to sort of evidence like growth as an individual.
For people, you know, the millions of viewers that are happening right.
Yeah. My mom, your mom.
Hey,
Yeah.
I might try to record, because I don't do CrossFit or really do any HIIT workouts currently, but maybe find a classical one that doesn't need much equipment and record it and show people that, you know, don't know CrossFit and just see the obliteration that would occur.
Yeah, hit that wall.
So you've got cardio, and then we've got flexibility. So what did you come into CrossFit with? And then have you gained more flexibility, or what's going on?
I am blessed to be naturally flexible. I'm probably hypermobile in some, so like squatting for me is obnoxious because I'll get to the bottom and then like everything can go 10 different directions. Whereas a lot of people are like, I need to get into full depth. But interestingly, horseback riding, if you think we're standing on stirrups, my ankle mobility is like, I can almost fold in half. So that transfers really well to CrossFit. Doug, my husband, is not so mobile, and a lot of stuff, you know, suffers from that. Not like he's amazingly strong, technically sound, like in every way is a great CrossFitter, but doesn't have hamstring mobility, certain movements, or like get in the right starting position for a snatch. Right. Does he still snatch well? Absolutely. But those are the type of things I don't think CrossFit does well in the sense. Just come to class, you're probably not going to get more mobile unless you have a coach that's like really drilling that into you.
Well, what's tough is that's just more time spent at the gym too, right? So like, absolutely. Are you gonna, are you gonna pay to go through a mobility session? Because now you just broke your class into 3 segments. It's like, you got our strength, our mobility, and it's like, we got to still be at the same time. So no, that's super.
Yeah, that one is a challenge. And like I know some people that sort of have just made it their habit, like class finishes and they always spend 15 minutes of mobility afterwards. Like you really can still use like that physical location as sort of your like, hey, when I'm here, I do all my work and I don't leave till I'm done. So it's on you, but it's still an extra mental item to have to check off.
Since you're so mobile, do you practice for weightlifting, like snatching or cleans at the bottom where it might be? Do you practice holding positions, like your lowest position, with weight and things like that, so that you master those certain spots within the overhead squat and things like that?
Yeah, I should put in more time on the Olympic. I did recently kind of just do a session with one of our coaches who was an Olympic lifting coach for a while. More out of like the technicality of Olympic lifting fascinates me. So I did a session on the snatch with him. It was less about kind of more like nailing in the mobility of all of that and more like, you know, just positionally like bar path and like where your shins coming out of that first pull and all those things. So I wouldn't say I do it as much from a mobility standpoint, but it's definitely very helpful in sort of facilitating all of those other technical conversations.
Yeah, so it sounds like more of a yes, you were just talking about the technical, but even for you, it's more like stability within those, since you can go into those extreme positions. So like, that's what would be, I don't know, like most bang for your buck, just because you don't need to work on your mobility because it's there for you. But
yeah, and I think part of the hurdle I wish people realize is like everybody's got their hurdle. So, you know, if you got great mobility, like it's not a disadvantage to be like, my mobility sucks, I can't be an athlete. It's like, no, like you're saying, like there's all these elements of fitness. So if your mobility sucks, well, guess what element of fitness you're working on? But that's not cool. That's not sexy. That's not at all impressive to the girls. Like nobody's walking into Planet Fitness and being like, oh, look at the guy in the corner, like that can touch his toes, you know, like it's stupid. It's stupid.
But for me in the recent past, I've been really working on mobility within my hips, because I kind of foresee that is the part of my body that's going to stop me from doing the things I love. And it's like, man, I still want to be lifting weights, playing sports, running long distance in 10, 20 years. So it's like, get that under control now so that when I leave, a squatting session, my hip doesn't hurt, or I play volleyball and, my hip doesn't hurt afterwards. So that's what I'm trying to get mobile, but then also strong in those mobile positions, like pistol squats. I can't do a pistol squat at all, even close, but I've been doing like step downs and being really, really under control of my knee stability there. But there's something off because for whatever reason, I hurt my left knee a couple of years ago, but my left leg is so much more under control than my right leg. But
everybody's got the one.
But my right leg is where
that's your injured side.
My right hip is the one that bothers me the most, and so I'm like, there's something here that I need to keep working on. So it's been that's been interesting. So
I'll have to send you a drill on pistols that was shown to me. But have you ever like hooked your ankle or like your foot behind your contralateral ankle? So like if you're going to do a pistol on the right leg, you'll hook your left leg behind your right ankle.
Oh, interesting.
So helpful.
So I'm currently doing like a step down where, cause I don't have the mobility to get down lower enough, or even my knees start hurting. So it's more of like starting where it's just this distance, and then I can go a little higher and whatever.
On a box or something.
Yeah, I would still be interested in that for sure.
Yeah.
So mobility, so we've covered all of them except body composition.
That's right.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So this one's wild. And again, if there's like, no, I don't want to talk about it, we can move on too. But you had mentioned is about an eating disorder, and man, it is crazy the percentage of women that suffer through that, like through middle school and high school. And I guess my question is, what do you think? Was it a cultural thing, like where you grew up, that you think that was a thing? But that, I mean, it clearly happens in Illinois as well. But yeah, I wonder how much it has to do with media, how much it does with school, and things like that. But were you ever like chunky? Were you like, if you now thinking back? Yeah, see, that's wild.
I was chunkiest after I had my eating disorder problems, which is so ironic.
Right.
No, I wouldn't say I was like, I was your average kid. Like I didn't have a whole lot of muscle mass because I was like an 8th grade girl. Like, but no, you would look at me and be like, oh, she's like that awkward growth spurt skinny kid. Like I had nothing wrong with me. And I've never, it's funny answering that question because I'm a bit at a loss. I'm naturally just super intense and a perfectionist. And like, I think it was just the first awareness I had of my body, just part of becoming a teenage female in America and seeing media and all these things, and just starting to do a comparison and being like, I could be better, or like this could be better, or that could be better. And then for me, I think it just spiraled. I know a lot of people who had like a triggering event or a comment from somebody or like whatever, a trauma, that type of stuff that triggered it. I did not. I did grow up in the San Francisco Bay Area where I am now, which is about as hyper competitive and individualistic as you get. So there is this mentality of like outperform, outlook, outdo everybody in every sense. So sure, maybe there was an undercurrent of that, but yeah, it's such a strange thing. Like, and I could almost, I think a bold claim would be that 100% of females have an eating disorder of some kind. Sort of as we're also like defining fitness very also with this mental aspect. Like, sure, there's eating disorders that you have like obvious behavioral changes. I don't know a girl that doesn't have stuff going on in here. And that's male, like kind of sort of a sexist view on that, but yeah, it was so real for me and it so affected. And like, that's what got me into nutrition. So there were a lot of positives that came out of it too.
It must have forced your hand on thinking about like, I tend to think that people might start getting into like just thinking about what they eat because they've gained weight kind of thing. Like, oh shoot, I need to start figuring it out because now I put 10 pounds on. Whereas it's like, no, I got to figure it out so that I'm back to normal.
Put weight on. Yeah. And I loved that. Like I had an anatomy teacher in high school who had some interesting ideas on nutrition, some I would disagree with, but he had been an ex-bodybuilder and was the one that ever gave me my first little like weightlifting program. So I would like go into the football training room, like 2 days a week
Right.
and like lift some weights. And I was so proud of myself. But I remember being like hating that I was going to be putting on weight. I was also convinced I could maybe like kind of do like eat health. If I wouldn't actually put on weight, I'd just look really good. So like there's all this stuff. But that's like what got me so obsessed with like calorie counting, which now I wouldn't argue that calorie counting is a great way to go. But yeah, I mean, like, oh, I'm going to eat like this salmon and like all these almonds. And I had it like all laid out. And that's kind of where that love of it began. It was a really unhealthy starting point, but absolutely that was my experience. And yeah, you have to have a passion. Like you don't stay consistent in things you don't care about. So even though it was an unhealthy start, like it was the foundation of me being fascinated by the topics of fitness and nutrition and, just a natural progression along the way that hopefully is a lot healthier now. But I would say like anybody, like I want to look good, but I've seen the most positive outcomes like mentally, but also physically in how I look when I've cared the least about it. Like what's over the last couple of years of me, I've been back at CrossFit for a little over 3 years now. I'm about 10 or 15 pounds less than I was. Like I look absolutely different. Like my comp has completely changed. So, you hear people joke about like, just throw away your scale. Like,
right.
It's kind of true. Just throw away your scale. Like if you can fall in love with a sport, whether it's, Pilates, I mean, you could argue different things, but like just find something that you love that you're going to consistently show up for and just show up. And like 3 years later, here I am. People who are like, dude, your arms. And I'm like, what about it? Like, it's just so funny how when we like worship something, it consumes us. So I don't know. I feel like I've come to love CrossFit and love fitness, but I'm also the person that'll eat like the whole pint of ice cream or the chocolate cake after I had kale salad for lunch. So anyway, rambling.
It's funny. It's funny especially when you get like, this is kind of when you think about your arms, right? But it's like, man, you know what I see all the time is just a strong back. Have you started seeing like more in CrossFit? You're just like, dude, that's a good back.
Oh yeah.
Like that's a strong back right there.
Yeah, no, from day one, honestly, like I feel like guys, at least in like high school and college, were always like, oh, they're so into my arms. Like, dude, all I ever thought was attractive was like a strong back and a strong like posterior chain. Like you actually look like you could do something with that body. Like it's not just fake. So absolutely.
And then what's interesting about talking about what gets us pumped, right? Like CrossFit gets you pumped. So, but what's interesting about I've talked to 2 other people so far. Brian is a power lifter. And then the last person was a marathon runner. Right. And so it's like, what is the same with everyone is their passion about what their goals are or what they just enjoy doing. So Brian loves to lift heavy weights. And so what his weekly workout looks like is totally different than the marathon runner, where she just loves to run and loves that time alone and to process things, right? Where Brian does that in the gym. And she does it on her long runs, and she doesn't run with music, which was interesting. She doesn't. Yeah. So she's like, she said that she found when she went for long runs with music on, she didn't feel like she'd clear anything out. Like she still felt like she needed to find some, like she wasn't stress relieved, if that makes sense.
Like additional detox.
So it was like, whoop, lost it. And now she got to sort things out within her own head. It's like, whatever. And so that was really cool. Do you feel like that's something that can occur in CrossFit since it's such a social aspect that it's like you get to work on your own mental state while you're there? Or is it also the opposite end because that's your time to be social, right? Like, you get to, now's your time that you're hanging out with everyone.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a unique type of camaraderie in that like it's every man for himself or woman for herself in a communal setting. So like what you're benefiting from is this just encouraging, positive environment, but like you're not done with the workout till you're done with the workout, unless it's a partner workout. So there's still a lot of personal accountability. And honestly, like I always work out at the end of my workday, partly for kind of what both Brian and your marathon runner are describing of like, it's the bookend on my workday that CrossFit requires so much attention and it's so all consuming and
Yeah.
intense while you're like, it's just a windshield wiper. Like everything's clean by the time I leave. Like, sure, maybe I'll remember something stressful that happened at work, but for that hour I'm there, phones away, like totally invested and focused. And that's indispensable for me in like my daily rhythms, because otherwise I'll just stew on stuff. So yeah, similar thing, different sport.
I would love for there to be more research done outside. So there's a lot of research on aerobic based when pertains to anxiety and depression, like how much it can help affect it, like the chemicals that are released while doing that can actually help with anxiety and depression. But there's no research really that's been done for strength, like powerlifting specifically, or at least none that I've seen. And then I'd really love to see CrossFit, like if someone is suffering through anxiety or depression, because you get both worlds, right? Like you're going to get nailed with some really intense cardio and training. And so, yeah, I wish someone was much just
I haven't looked to see
tackle that, to take these groups of people, put them in there, and then see how much better they feel afterwards, or not.
Yeah, there's definitely, I don't know that there's like specifically studies on that out there, but there are definitely studies on like people getting off medication, or like even like inmates who have had a CrossFit program started. Like I know Matt Frazier just recently dropped into like a program that somebody's running on, it is really cool to see. Like, I don't know. I don't like the concept of self-belief because it doesn't really align with like the beliefs I hold in general, but just like that confidence instilling, which, maybe it's a direct link between like the chemical reactions to exercise and mood or whatever, or it's like, it is just literally reframing an identity and like an outlook. So to me, I'm like, I don't know what the path is, or if it is direct or if it's indirect, but like, I don't care who you are, you can't argue, no matter what, the modality is, that exercise like exist without it and be a healthy individual.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I found that very true for me, and it's cool to see it in other people for sure.
Have you ever been so messed up from a workout that it then affected your job the next day? Like, cause you're in surgery. So
I'm in surgery.
So have you ever?
Right now I'm wondering, we did a lot of pulling movements in my bicep. Like both Doug and I this morning woke up and we're like, I don't know if I can like straighten my arms. It's so sore. But yeah, I mean, it's funny. We joke all the time at work because like I'll snap sutures sometimes. Like you'll tie them and then you have to like tie it tight before you cut it.
Okay.
And I'll like snap the suture accidentally, and they'll be like, "You've been lifting too much weight." It's like always making fun of me. But no, I don't think so. I mean, if I had to one of these, it's the opposite. There's high pressure situations in certain, I mean, what I do, like, sure, I had some training, but a lot of medicine is just trial by fire of like, hey, ever done this before? No? Great. Well, you get to do it today. And like, you're going to get 3 seconds of instruction and then you're going to finish it.
Wow.
Which is kind of how it was. Like I do a lot of wound closures and things in the beginning. Like I've never done one on a real person.
Right.
And I got some demonstration, like our team's great, but at some point it's sink or swim. And that's one of those aspects of fitness we're talking about where, really it's, what do you do with unexpected situations you've never been exposed before? Like what if they throw in a movement you've never done, which is sort of a classic CrossFit thing to do right now. Like, hey, we're going to give you a cinder block with a handle on it. You got to put it over your head 10 times. And you're like, well, I've never done that. Like that is fitness. So I would almost argue that there's like a transferability to real life from what I do in the gym, whether it's my career or anything else, that it's just like, I felt that like skyrocketing heart rate stress with the 10-second countdown before the workout starts.
Yeah.
I also feel that when they're like, you're going to go sew that up. What? Like me? So maybe the opposite even.
The thing that makes me nervous about CrossFit for myself, not the CrossFit theology, it's more so of like, I like to play. I'm in like 2 to 3 leagues. Sometimes Allison and I will be in like 2 leagues of volleyball. And so I've currently this summer is when I usually get pretty fit for cardio, but it was like, man, I cannot get destroyed from a bike ride or even a run to then show up to volleyball, because we're exploding one way to then jump in the front row. and you're just like, I need my legs. So is every single workout just like, hey, we're gun ho going for it? Or can you also be like, are people going to give you flack for being like, no, I'm going about like 80% effort today or 60% effort?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I Doug's beef with CrossFit is he's like, dude, I should not come anywhere and go 100% every time I show up. Like, that's not good for me. So I think it's a really fair criticism and a valid criticism, especially if you're incorporating other types of sport into your life. And yeah, you definitely can. You have to have the humility or, the stick with it to just to be like, dude, I don't care what you think of me. I'm going to go at 70% today. And I will often do that. Like, my body, which is not the case for everyone, feels better when I'm going, even if I'm brutally sore and like still moving and doing an active recovery type day, than if I just took the day off. There's absolutely days where I'm like, I am crippled. I'm going to go sleep and not do anything today. But I often will go in, and I often will get friendly flack, where people are like, come on, you could have gotten like 10 more rounds.
Right.
Which is really just like a backhanded compliment and like people wanting to have
Yeah.
But yeah, you have to. I mean, I think that's one of the crucial things if you are participating in a CrossFit style workout as a regular thing, of having the maturity to say, like, look, if I'm mixing other things into my life,
right,
I need to know when to say, like, this is going to be too much. I need to not go, or doesn't matter what people say about me. I need to go at like half effort and just go sweat.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. And I've had trouble with that recently because I have a friend that's wanting to maybe do like a half marathon trail run, and I've never done a long form run, and I would love to train for it.
Yeah.
But I'm so addicted to my CrossFit stuff. I'm like, there's no way I could do 6 days a week of high intensity and then also be adding in this running volume. So it's a real question. While working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if, I bet you, well, it depends on how much you want to get done in the half marathon, right? Like if the goal is to finish it, then I bet you wouldn't have to train that much, but once a week, to be honest, and then just over time add mileage. But if you're like, I want to hit a good time for you, then it's like, oh, now I got to change, like swap out some days and things like that. But
yeah, absolutely. You'd have to modify it. But yeah, I mean, you probably heard like cold turkey to half marathon last summer, having never run more than probably 6 or 8 miles. But that's the CrossFit mentality when you get stupid, where you're like, I've never done that before. Like, how bad can it be? And finished.
So you guys did a half marathon. Oh, and she was talking about a trail run. See, trail run,
it's totally different.
Yeah. So 2 years ago, I did a trail run series. It was cool. It was dirt cheap, and it was like $35 for something silly for a really cool event where this covered all these races. December, you did a 5K. January, you did a 10K. February, you did a 15K. And the last one was a 20K. And
that's a cool idea.
Basically a half marathon, except, dude, this thing was gnarly. Like, you don't think of Illinois as hilly, but if you find the right place, it was wild. He sent us totally off a trail, and so it's just like roll your ankle city. And so I bring that up because there was some real ankle endurance that occurred the first time. Like, it was slowly build up. Then the next year I was like, I'm just gonna hop in. Like, I can run 6 miles, I can run 10 miles, it's fine. But I hadn't been running on trails. And so then I tried we did the six miles, the second race, and my ankle and my foot did not like me. And it was like, I gotta slowly build up to that, or I can get messed up. So
totally. No, it is a different.
How was your? You guys did a half marathon last year, kind of out of the blue. How did your How did your knees recover afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, it was COVID, right? I was bored out of my mind. I was like, thankfully my parents had a home gym, and they live nearby to me, so we were just over there doing home gym stuff all the time. And I was like, it was like 1:00 on a Thursday or Friday. I don't know what was up in my mind at the time, but I was like, we should just run a half marathon today. And Doug's like, today? And I'm like, yeah, we could leave in like an hour. Like, it was just no notice, no planning. Like, I had no clue what I was doing. I don't even remember if I ran. I think I ran in Nobles. Like, I had not do this well.
Right.
But I just had the one rule that like, unless you physically cannot, don't walk. Like, I don't care how slow you're running. So we just took off, kind of mapped out like a random route with don't walk. I think we called you on the way. Like anyway, we were just cruising, having a good time. And I remember we were probably like 8 miles in. I just remember this moment of like, oh no.
Oh no. That's
like, this is going to be bad.
yeah.
And thankfully my knees tend to hold up okay. I feel it a lot more in my hips, which is maybe just kind of like a Q angle female thing from the femoral angle into the hip. But anyway, I was starting to kind of get some like hip pain, but not bad. Like I know the difference between I should cut it and just not do this.
Right.
But there was one point, I think we were like 11.6 miles in and we hit a light because we were coming through kind of civilization again. And we had to stop. And I remember the walk sign turned and I like went to just go like you would normally go and almost fell on my face because I like couldn't initiate the movement in the same way because I was so sore.
Right.
And we got back and my parents have a pool in the back. And I literally just kept running and ran straight into the water. I was like, I'm just going under there and just awful. But yeah, just that mental fulfillment of like, yeah, I thought I could do this, could do it. Many points along the way that it was horrible. And you're sitting there going, maybe I shouldn't, maybe I should stop. What if I'm hurting myself? Like you do have to be smart. But and then I took like 2 days off and did absolutely nothing because I felt horrible. But yeah, just a cool challenge and totally out of the blue. So we'll see what I do next. That's stupid, but there will be something.
Absolutely. But CrossFit, there's no way CrossFit didn't help with that half, right? Like,
yeah, mentally and physically for sure.
Cool. Well, Haley, I think we really got all the topics down either. Like I was going to ask deliberately about mental health, but we covered that throughout the whole time too. So
yeah.
Well,
no, I like your definition. It's got some good kind of holisticness to it. It's not just a physical thing. And there's a lot of aspects even to the physical. So
great.
Explore it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for being a guest. It was a ton of fun and good luck in your fitness life and everything else.
Thank you. Right back at you. Thanks for having me.